Okay, welcome to another episode of Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete. I'm Peter Rising. I'm joined as ever by my good friend Rue Campbell, and we have a wonderful guest with us today, Cathy Moya, who I'm going to let Rue introduce properly in a moment. But before we do, Rue, how's things? How have you been?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. All good. I guess it's been a bit of a busy week for us, recording a live show yesterday. And now we've got the pleasure of talking to Cathy today. But, idle hands are the devil's favourite toys, so good to keep busy. So, without further ado, I'll introduce Cathy. So, Cathy is a senior program manager for customer experience programs at Microsoft. And in particular, that's going to be Endpoint Manager, Intune, ConfigMgr, and Windows. So, Cathy, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, am I coming through okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
It was a little bit laggy, so I'm not sure if I'm...
loud and clear.
Great. Glad to hear it. Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for joining us. And I guess, I know that you're a senior program manager for customer experience programs at Microsoft, and you get involved with ConfigMgr and Intune and Windows and things like that. And I guess, there's... When folk are on the outside of Microsoft, there's always a lot of curiosity about what goes on in there. So I'm just wondering, what does the day-to-day life within your role look like?
So I'm on a really interesting team, and we are called Customer Experience Engineering, but we are considered an engineering discipline, just like the program managers who are there writing the specs for the various features. But our program management slant's a little bit different. So in this larger org, we have people who are called our Customer Acceleration Team, CATs. And if you have a lot of licenses, they will go out and actually help you deploy MEM or Intune pieces of it, Defender, all sorts of different technology pieces. And if you don't have enough licenses for that, but you still have a lot, we have our fast track team that's part of our customer experience engineering. So they will get on the phone, they will help you deploy that stuff. Go to AKMS fast track if you need help deploying. And so we do a lot to really help the customers use it. And then also our supportability team is part of this org, which is not just, it's not the people who are picking up the phone and taking the frontline calls, but it's the people kind of at the end of that funnel who are able to look at the support cases coming in and say, how do we engineer the product better so that people don't need the support? What troubleshooting can we build in? What kind of deflection can we do to help to self-serve? And then as part of that, and then we also have our partners team, because of course, we live and die with our partners. We have a huge partner ecosystem. So our customer connection team sits kind of within this larger customer experience engineering team. And what we're really doing is, the way I give the short form is say, I get my engineers to talk to my customers so we can build better products. But there are a lot of different ways that we do that. So for example, I manage the MVPs for MEM and for Windows and devices for IT, and I'm part of that larger MVP ecosystem that Microsoft has. So there's a central MVP group under developer relations or developer evangelism. And then we all have different people in the different orgs. So like Peter works with, I believe Ali is your main lead, Peter. Awesome woman who's taking care of like all the Office apps and services. And then in my little chunk over here, I'm really about saying, okay, how can I make sure that if my product team needs fast feedback, they know how to get to the MVPs? Because our MVPs are awesome at fast feedback. But we have a lot of other programs that we do. So my coworkers run things we call our Customer Connection Program, or CCP, where we have groups of NDA customers who we meet with regularly. And they tend to be people who are, full-time employees at different places, although we do have some partners who participate in that as well. And we let our MVPs into that group. One interesting things they've been doing lately is what they call neighborhoods, where they will set up a neighborhood around a certain feature or technology and then create some infrastructure like Teams channels so that they can communicate, and then they can focus in on specific aspects of that technology pretty quickly. And I propose that MVPs are kind of like our convenience store in the neighborhood. Like if you just want the fast feedback and it doesn't have to be on a particular subject or a particular channel, just go to the MVPs and ask, and you'll probably get somebody who can answer. And I'll see people, like developers will go out there and they'll say, well, I could do A or I could do B. What should I do? And the MVPs will very often come back and say, well, really you should do C because, we need this piece or this piece, or it'll be overwhelmingly A, don't even think about B. And so the engineer is getting that great input on the spot and able to make a decision that's going to be better for everybody in the long run. So, my typical day, a lot of the MVP management, I also manage a lot of work with our Ignite conference. When it was in person, I was doing a lot of the delegation management and the booth management, and not so much the actual programming, but kind of all of the customer connection around that experience. And now that Ignite is a lot smaller when it's digital form, we actually do a lot on our team after Ignite to create that kind of involvement. So like I run a 24-hour marathon that our CAT team delivers. So we do 8 hours of content in Asia Pacific, 8 hours, same 8 hours in Europe, same 8 hours in the US in a 24-hour marathon. Just hilarious. It's awesome. So, my day varies a lot depending on, are we getting ready for Ignite? Are we getting ready for an MVP summit? Are we just, doing some kind of the times in between when we're keeping it all together?
Amazing. And what was your path to your current role? Cathy? How did you get to where you are? And I can tell I've got some feedback on my. Can you hear the feedback on me?
No, it sounds good.
No. Okay. Oh no, it must just be me.
Stopped. So
yeah.
Ghosts and wires.
It's all right now. Yeah. Low production values on this show, as you always say. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, Cathy? How you ended up in this role? What your career path and journey was like?
Randomness and networking is what got me here. So I was a theater major in college at UCLA. I did theater from elementary school on. I went to a high school for performing arts in San Jose. And I loved, now I'm getting a bit of feedback there. Are we coming through? I can put on headsets if we need to, so let me know. I just thought theater was everything, but I always gravitated toward the tech in theater as well. So like I had my first play, a roommate had a computer with WordStar on it, and that's how I wrote my first play. And then I got an Apple IIe with WordPerfect 1.0.
Wow. WordPerfect. I remember that.
It ran on 2 5.25 floppy disks, and if you wanted spell check, that was $30 extra and a third floppy.
Love it.
But in lighting design, we were doing computerized lighting design. We were getting into AutoCAD to do the light plots, and so the technology was just seeping into everything, and I was really good at it. And then after I graduated, I just needed a break. So instead of getting the teaching credential I thought I would get, I went to work in environmental politics and did a lot of door-to-door canvassing. And then I took over as the office manager, where I had to do the payroll in Lotus 1234 DOS. And I didn't know anything about spreadsheets. I taught myself that, and I taught myself DOS. I knew the CD command and the dir command, and I would get in there and just type stuff and see what happened. And sometimes the computer crashed, and sometimes applications started, and I just kind of figured it all out, and it was pretty cool.
Oh, memories. I love DOS so much. Remember on Windows 3.1, it would start to DOS, and then you would type in win and hit return, and it would start. So good.
Yeah, the whole shell concept was.
Yeah.
So I did, I did various kinds of, small scale desktop support kind of things. I worked at 3Com for a while. Remember 3Com, Network Adapter people?
I do.
I worked there, and then after that contract ended, they said they were contracting with a company called ExecuTrain that did end user training. So they said, well, you should go talk to them. And so they hired me, and I was teaching, Word, Excel, PowerPoint in very early versions, and also, Harvard graphics, like old stuff, Lotus 123, Lotus Notes. And they sent me to get my Novell CNA training. And so I taught ExecuTrain's Novell admin curriculum for a while, and then just decided, that I wanted to do more with that. So I ended up going to the place where I'd done my Novell training, which had been called Clarity and then became Technology Education Centers. And then from there, I went to another training company called Quick Start Technologies, which I think is still around in some format. And when I was there, when I was at Quick Start, I started teaching what was then Systems Management Server. And I got really good with that. And I got to know people who worked on the courseware team for that, the legendary Wally Mead and Janet Shepardigian and, some of those people. So when they got to the point where they were writing what was going to be the SMS 2002 course, they asked Wally, well, who should we ask to be a subject matter expert on this? And he said me.
Hey.
Like, great, so that was the contract. But then, after working there for a while on the contract, they said, hey, we're going to pull the contract as the product's slipping, but we'd like to interview for a full-time job working on security courseware. And I said, great, I know nothing about security. And they said, we'll teach you.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. So you mentioned Novell there, and I actually started out in Novell as well at the start of my IT career. And Unix before that, a bit of AIX Unix and SCO Unix, I think it was called. I did a bit of
I never had you figured for a Unix guy.
Yeah, that's where I started out in a law firm in the mid '90s, and but then Novell and CNA you mentioned, was that certified netware administrator? Is that right?
I think so, or
something like that.
Yeah,
but I just vague memories now. I just remember Novell being very blue.
Well, that service and support class was a fantastic class. If you ever taught that one or took that one.
Yes, I did actually. I did do that one. That was really good stuff. But I think Novell, they got swallowed up into some other organization eventually, didn't they? I checked on them not that long ago, and I think they were acquired by somebody, and they're still doing something to this day. But I'm not quite sure what. But great stuff though. Great times.
One of the things I want to kind of run by you, Cathy, was you mentioned Ignite earlier and how and depending on what kind of time of the year it is, you'd be involved with organizing stuff like Ignite. How, when, I guess, going back to last year when COVID hits and it's like all of a sudden we need to radically change everything we've been doing here for the last however long Ignite or Tech Ed or anything before that was going, how did you adapt to that so quickly, and what was the kind of thought processes behind getting up and running in a virtual environment?
It was really interesting. So the MVP Summit was the first Microsoft Tier 1 event to switch to totally digital because it was supposed to be in March 16th of 2020. And so they made the call in late February that we were going to have to go digital. Which was interesting at the time because I've since become very interested in virtual reality, and I really wanted like a virtual reality experience. I just didn't know it was actually possible at that point. So we did everything in Teams, and we got through it. And then we had the Build conference was the second one that was the big Tier 1 thing. And I don't usually, our team doesn't usually do very much with Build, but I said that I would drive all the Build stuff because I knew that whatever we did with Build, it was likely that it was going to be a template for what happened later with Ignite, which ended up being the case. So I coordinated a couple of sessions for that and got some good insight. But it's, one of the things we saw is it's definitely a much more condensed format. We get a lot of telemetry. We can tell what the eyeballs are doing when you're watching on those web pages or in those Teams channels. So, everything that we're doing is really a response to the data that we're seeing, and like shorter segments because we know that digital fatigue is a thing. So we also knew going into Ignite that we weren't going to get a lot of airtime. Now we always struggle. Everyone always struggles. It's like there's a pie. And, we know Teams is going to get a nice big chunk of the pie because Teams is so central to everything. And then, everybody in modern work, which Teams is a part of, is trying to get some. And actually Intune and MEM have been kind of an interesting piece here because, we have been grouped with modern work in terms of how marketing sees the world. But we're also very much a security piece and part of the Enterprise Mobility Plus security suite in terms of licensing. And when Brad Anderson left the company several months ago, they actually moved us underneath Harv Belinder. And so we are now security, compliance, and management. And so it's been interesting to see how marketing is kind of adjusting to that, because they usually have security, compliance, and identity. And so now they're kind of having to adapt to a security, compliance, identity management world, and and how we're putting things together. So so we're always trying to get pie in whichever place we can get it, and as much as we can get, so we can get our messaging out there. And then they did a lot of videos. So we recorded a lot of things which are available on Tech Community. If you go to ak.ms WAC Video Hub. And then, we have, a lot of the modern work pieces are underneath that as well. But I also said, a big part of Ignite and a big part of that experience is really trying to bring people together to learn about this stuff. And so that was kind of how this 24-hour marathon idea was born. And, so we had to figure out kind of how to run that. But, a lot of it is we have Teams, we know how to use it. We had some Ask the Experts events at Ignite, both in September and March, but they tend to be very broad. And how do you get an expert on something like, the whole empire that Brad Anderson was presenting on in that September? So we did our own Ask the Experts, and we brought back our configuration manager team, because they are hugely popular. Their Ask the Expert session at in-person Ignite is usually one of the highest attended. There are lines out the door to get into that. So we said, okay, let's do that virtually. And then we had the interesting idea of setting up one-on-one meetings between people on our product team and customers. And so we used Microsoft Bookings so that we could set up these one-on-one meetings. And, so we did it both in September and March, where you could just go there and say, I want a meeting in Autopilot. And it would show you all the available times for the Autopilot experts we had. And you would pick a time and you would have an Autopilot expert show up and talk to you for a half hour.
Yeah, and I guess, you're going to get a ton of value from that, right? I mean, these people are fountains of knowledge. So if you're a customer being a chance to get that one-on-one meeting, I'm definitely going to go to that. Whereas I guess part of me wonders if, because of the virtual experience, people might sign up for these things and not attend. I guess that's more likely than if we're buying it. But I guess for those one-on-one events, the customer's definitely going to show up, right? Because what value they're going to get there.
Well, it worked better the second time around. I tuned the Bookings, lets you send a lot of confirmation stuff in reply, and so by tuning that, we had a pretty good attendance rate. I think we were like 80, 85 show rate on people doing those. But it's a bit of a mixed bag. But it's just a great way to get like real human connection. And I've experimented with some things with virtual reality. I think there's a lot of potential there to be able to create a true virtual expo kind of experience, because one of the things that people really miss at conferences is those informal interactions, the serendipity. You walk down the hall, you see somebody or you just overhear a conversation and you start listening, and maybe you even join into the conversation. And you can't do that in a video conference, because it's really, you got to pass the stick of who gets to talk, right? But in virtual reality, you have a 3D environment where people can talk over here and people can talk over here and have the same conversation happening just like you would in a real space.
So I get that. That's definitely something to pick up in then, because my understanding is you do a lot of work with, is it Altspace VR, if I'm getting the name of it right. How did you kind of stumble upon that, and how have you accelerated the use of that? Because it sounds cool, but it's not something I guess a lot of folk will have heard of.
Yeah, it's a little odd. So, when the summit switched, I sat down and I wrote to Lori Popmeyer, who knows been a guest on this show before. Yeah. And I felt bad now because I just hadn't stopped to think of how horrendously busy she was trying to move everything in the summit onto Teams. So sorry, Lori. But I sat down and I said, gosh, what I really want is this experience where you could be an avatar and you could walk into a virtual conference center and you could sit in a virtual seat and talk to the avatar next to you. And you could send emojis during the talk to show how you feel about what the presenter is saying. And then afterwards, you could rush the stage and talk to the speaker, or you could have those hallway conversations. And I was telling this to a coworker of mine after the MVP Summit was done. And she said, oh, you should check out this thing, AltspaceVR. I think Microsoft owns it. And I said, I don't have a VR headset. And she said, I don't think you need one. It was just one of those like life-changing moments. So I went and I checked it out, and I found out Microsoft does indeed own this. We acquired it back in 2017. You do not need a headset. You can do it with a free app for either Windows or Mac. and they are working on some kind of a mobile implementation. So, cell phone. There are other platforms that'll do mobile. And if you have a VR headset, it's really cool because you get an immersive visual 3D experience. So you got the headset on, and you literally turn your head and you see the scene change, and you can walk through the space. And I don't own a headset, but somebody loaned me an Oculus a couple weeks ago, and so I was doing a tour of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory with this group called Educators in VR. It was amazing, and my husband was kind of freaked out because he walked through and he said, "You weren't there. Like, your body was there. I saw you in the headset, but you were not in that room." I said, "No, I was in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory." Felt like it. But even without that, I don't use the headset all that much. I'll probably buy one eventually. But I mostly go in what we call 2D mode. So it's kind of like in a video game, like a first-person thing where, right. I'm not turning my physical head, but I just turn my avatar's head, and I can look all around. And I still get that 3D audio effect in the space. So, I can have really good conversations with people. And you can do presentations because they have a lot of presenter tools in Altspace. You can project content. You can make people raise their hands and pass them the megaphone so that they can't, speak out of turn. But you can also just have like a happy hour or a booth, or you walk from booth to booth and talk to people.
It is fantastic. I had the pleasure of being introduced to AltspaceVR by your good self, Cathy, at the MVP Summit, I think it was, earlier this year. And it was such a cool experience. I too don't have a VR headset. I did the 2D experience from my Mac, which I was using, and it was so good, so good. It took me a little while to get a hang of some of the controls, and I walked into the space, and Ali was there actually, and Ali started talking to me, and I couldn't figure out how to respond, but so it takes a little while to figure it out, but then eventually I caught up, and I bumped into you, and we had some great chats, and so good, absolutely brilliant.
I need to try.
There's a lot of potential there. I think it's the early days.
I've never even put on a VR headset. I feel so uncultured and untechnical, but it's just never something I've tried. No, but it sounds exciting. It sounds useful. And I guess when it's like you said, when we've moved to these virtual conferences, you lose that just overhearing a conversation and then jumping into it, walking past someone and just striking up a conversation. So I guess anything we can do to try and replicate that, it's going to be difficult, but it helps patch that gap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see some interesting things. There's a company called FrameVR.io that has an integration they're working on with Teams, so that you'll be able to go seamlessly from a Teams meeting into the kind of 3D audio space. Spatial IO. There are a lot of different companies, so it's still very early days. Facebook just announced Horizon meeting rooms, and they have their Horizon thing, which I think is, kind of a bit of a competitor to Altspace, but they don't have a 2D component. And I think it's going to be a long time before people are willing to shell out for these headsets. Although, when you get right down to it, if you can buy somebody a headset for $300 and they can go into this virtual space and you don't need to buy them all these plane tickets through the year to feel like they're really connecting with coworkers.
Yeah.
There's some interesting calculus there, or, a $300 headset instead of $2,395 for a ticket for Ignite.
Yeah.
And, maybe
Absolutely.
you pay, some extra for the conference itself. But, if you could offer a digital twin experience in virtual reality, I think it would be something that would be a lot more satisfying than, just trying to watch the recordings when we start getting into hybrid events.
And I think it's only going to improve and grow and evolve anyway, isn't it? Because at Ignite, the last Ignite, they talked about something that's closely linked with AltspaceVR, which is Microsoft Mesh, isn't it? How does that sort of link into the whole thing?
So, Microsoft, we are a platform company, right? So Mesh is a platform that will let you create your own mixed reality experiences, which could be, virtual reality. It could be some kind of augmented reality, depending on how you want to make it work. And so there is also Active Directory integration with that. So really Altspace has an enterprise version that they are working on that is powered by this Mesh integration. And then, if you wanted to go and Mesh enable your own apps, then, you can get the SDK, you can start building that out. They have a Mesh app for HoloLens, and So it's really, we saw a very interesting experience where Alex Kipman did the keynote. And I think you can probably still see the keynote now. And you could either just watch it on the regular, web browser hero page, as we call it, in kind of a flat thing, or if you had an Altspace account, you could go into the virtual auditorium. And so, of course, that's what I did because, I'm all about the Altspace. And, the presentation was amazing. They had Alex Kipman there in what they called holoportation. So he wasn't there as a cartoon figure, but it's kind of like Space Jam, where you have like the real human against the cartoon backdrop. But we holoported people in, but then as the audience, we were all there in our avatar form watching it. But even more amazing for me was walking into the space. Now, the way it's set up, they use a mirroring technology. So there are, hundreds of rooms that look exactly like each other. And as I go in, it's telling me, oh, you have friends in this room and that room and the other room, and you can join them. And actually the rooms where I'd want to join, the people were full. And I have a ton of friends in Altspace. I don't always know exactly who they are. So it's like, I just picked a room at random. But then other people saw me as they came in. And so it's like, oh, great. Here's Victoria. Oh, here's Cher. I haven't seen Cher in a while. So we start talking. And I was telling Cher, I see so many more female presenting avatars here than I would have seen in person at Ignite. And one of those female presenting avatars came over and started talking to us. And she said, hi. and so we started a conversation. And then it's like, oh, well, there's Aaron, from our doc team. And, he found us and he looks just like his avatar. Some people do, some people don't. And we were having this great conversation. And the only thing that was different than it would have been if we were in person is we were on the stairway. We were blocking a fire lane. But in VR, who cares? We didn't have purple shirts to, scoot us away and say, no, you can't be stand here. So we just stood there until the show started. And then we went and we took our seats.
Oh, amazing. I had some great trouble configuring my avatar, actually. It took me quite a while to get it looking anywhere near me. It's not easy at the best of times because my appearance seems to change quite regularly. 1 minute I'm wearing glasses, 1 minute I've got short hair, then long hair, and I never leave things the same way for long. But I got there eventually, and people actually did say, "Oh, you look really like you," so must have done a decent job.
Yeah, it's great. And you can be purple if you want to be purple.
Yes, and that reminds me of Vesku Nopinen, who actually made himself purple in there because he is Mr. Teams. So he did a really, really cool job on his.
Like a team superhero. There you go. I like it. Get the cape and everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the things, Cathy, that you're involved in, and I've got to be careful with my wording here because I don't want to say you lead it, because one of the things that's interesting about this is you've described it as an open source thing, and that's this, the hashtag WomenITPros. You frequently hold meetups for that within AltspaceVR, but my understanding of that, it's a way of kind of how I've seen it described as increasing the scope of, we see a lot of stuff to do with women in STEM, but it's also about getting women involved in IT, but not necessarily having to worry about, this is going to be extraordinarily technical and focused on code and things like that. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing there and how folks can help, seeing as it is a kind of quote-unquote open source thing you're working on.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say I'm the founder of it because what happened was at the 2018 MVP Summit, I had a brand new manager and he came to see my MVP session with my, at that time, ConfigMan and Intune MVPs. And he said, this is great. Love your MVPs. Where are your women? I said, I have 2 this year. That's twice as many as I had in 2017. Isn't that good? And I realized, no, it's not good. I mean, it's better. But it was the first time that I ever stopped to think, oh, could I actually do anything about this? And I've just been in tech for so long. It's like, well, yeah, of course, that's an issue, but I'm here and whatever. But I started to think, okay, if I wanted to have more MVPs in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, how would I find them? Well, first of all, I've got to find the customers. And so, there are a couple of big events that we run, like the Midwest Management Summit that our MVPs kind of took over as MMS. So there's some women there, but it's not a huge user community. It's not like SharePoint, which is, just a massive user community out there. So I said, okay, maybe I just need to find the IT pros, and then I might even be able to find some women and get them interested in the whole, M365 and management piece of it. So how do I find the women who are in the IT pro space? And I found tons of stuff for women who code, which is awesome. We need coders. I tell young women, you should learn how to code so you have something to fall back on. Because they used to tell me that about typing, but typing isn't a skill anymore. It's it's a commodity. If you love to code, but not everybody likes to code. Code doesn't work for everybody. And I've worked at Microsoft 19 years now. I don't write code. I don't have training in code. I work with a lot of people who don't code. So there's so many jobs that are code adjacent. And then there's this whole IT pro space because somebody has to run the code. And then there are tons of things that are just women in tech. Can you tell me what women in tech actually means anymore? Because, really, if you're in a professional environment, you are a woman in tech, or if you're not, you really need to get your act together. And I don't care if you're talking fashion design or, microbiology or retail, there is tech there. And that's the other thing I tell young women is you need to do what you love, but master the tech in what you love.
Yeah.
And I think that's, kind of where I go with the women IT pros is you don't like to code, that's fine. Find some of these other jobs that are here. If you're good at logical thinking, if you're good at analysis, if you're good at working with people and bringing them together to work on a project, those are all skills that are really important in tech. And I felt like, okay, we weren't really acknowledging that for women, and we're making it sound like, well, if you don't code or if you don't have a STEM degree, that's nice, bye. Like, no, kind of the tent. Let's find you a place where we can use whatever the skills are that you have, and use them for tech.
I guess it is a concern that it can be difficult, and you don't want to scare folks away from anything too technical, right? So I guess one of the things that always interests me is what's the ways that we can make, I don't want to say make it less technical, because at the end of the day, the IT industry is going to have that inherent techiness about it. But what are some other ways that we can attract that talent? Folks they're eager to learn, they're excited, they just want to get a good career. How do we make sure that they choose our industry and not a whole bunch of other industries that are quite attractive?
So I've seen some good pipeline. I've seen some good pipeline programs that exist out there, and Microsoft has a couple of them. And at first, the pipeline programs that they had were all still very code focused. And they have shifted now, and they have some that are, more holistic and more, project management type things. So, I think we've seen a lot of really interesting things come out of the coding dojos to get women into the coding space. So a little bit more of, just some of these other opportunities. Microsoft 365 is a huge space. There's a lot of administrative work that you can do. And if you're at a small company, you might be, more of an M365 generalist, and you're doing the SharePoint and the Teams and the Exchange and the security. Or, if you're going to go for a bigger company where you're going to specialize in that. I believe a lot in mentorship. And I would say, if you're out there and you're interested in this, go find who the MVPs are in the space and say, hey, would you mentor me? And you figure out what that looks like. Maybe it's getting started in technology and you need them to kind of help you find some material so that you can start to master something. Or if it's something where you're already working, maybe you want to go deeper, or you want to build your networking connections. Talk to them about that. And please, one of the things that I really, as you're learning this stuff, document what you're learning and share it with other people. Because that's how you start building more of those their journey, and then maybe you become an MVP, and you can turn around, you can help those other people in the process. Because there's so much, and I think the jobs they're a little bit harder to find. If you're going to go for a coding job, okay, is it C#? Is it Ruby? what is it? You can find this pretty easily, but these jobs might be a bit more amorphous, especially with that differentiation scale of the small and the big companies.
I think the key to it as well, a big part of it is also starting as early as possible in people's lives, male or female, getting into education, school leavers, and businesses, organizations should be targeting that and attracting them from school and getting them into apprenticeships into the organization and getting them a taste for everything that they can do within that organization. And right, you're going to spend a couple of months doing this, a couple of months doing that, and see what sticks for you. I think that's a great way of finding your place, finding your niche, and I'm a big believer in that, and I think that's a big fly just flew past me. but no, I think that's definitely the way to do it.
Yep, totally agree. And
and there's some great
Cathy's
groups.
point earlier. I love that comment you made about how as you're learning stuff, just go out there and blog about it, because that's kind of what I've been doing, and it's what a lot of folks who are where you want to be, that's how they got there. They put the blogs out, that creates this network that then helps them accelerate their career development, right? And it all just kind of, as you're learning, you can teach other folks, and that will make you a better learner, because you'll thoroughly understand it if you're having to teach folks how to do it as well.
Oh, yes. As a Microsoft certified trainer, I passed those exams so much more easily when I was prepping to teach it than when I was prepping to take an exam. Yeah, and there's some great groups out there. Tech Girls is an awesome group that is really trying to get girls to look at the broad spectrum of technology, not just development. There's another one, it's called Ignite, but not to be confused with the Microsoft conference. It's inspiring girls now in technology evolution. And they do a lot of really great programs in schools. We bring a lot of girls to Microsoft now virtually, but in person when we can. And really show them, hey, these are some of the different ways that you can get into tech. It's not just coding.
Yeah. Tech Girls, I know of. That's from David Patrick, isn't it? Is that right?
I'm not sure. There's a Women in Technology Summit that kind of feeds into them. When they do their conferences, they work very closely with that one.
Yeah. And one of the ones I've got involved with quite heavily as well is one of the ones that Laurie Potmeyer set up, the Women in Teams community. I've spoken on that one a bit and attended and got involved, and it's great to see these groups taking off so much and encouraging that and amplifying that. So long may it continue, and hopefully we're making some progress in this space, because we do need more women and girls in this industry, without a doubt. Definitely, we need to encourage that diversity and that inclusion, and we try and do our small part on this show to educate on that and amplify that message, and have interesting guests on who can speak to that. So hopefully we're heading in the right direction. Fingers crossed. It's going to take time.
Yeah. And Women in SharePoint is actually, I think, kind of the grandmother of them all. They've been around, I think it's probably like 12 or 13 years now. And I didn't find them until I started looking for these WomenITPros, and I think they're really a fantastic model. So they do really simple things like, their SharePoint is a fantastic, thriving community. And when there was a SharePoint event, they would get the women together right at the beginning, like on the first day of the conference, like if there's an expo and happy hour, they would get all the women together and just take a group photo. Doesn't cost anything. But you take the photo, you get the women talking to each other, and then they found that during the week, those women were hanging out together. They were having lunch together. They were going to sessions together. They go to the social events together. Because, you might be the only woman that your company is sending. You might be the only person your company is sending. And it can be uncomfortable sometimes at events like that. And, so having other women to hang out with was gold. And then they found over the years, like those women then want to come back because they had these relationships and they would see the same people that they were seeing. So I think that's a fantastic model to follow. And we were able to do some of that at the 2019 Ignite. And then, of course, with things as they are, it kind of put a damper on that. So we still have WomenITPros meetups. We do them in Altspace, and we also do them on Teams on the second Friday at noon in Teams. We have a speaker. And then the fourth Friday at 9 a.m. in Altspace, all Pacific time. but it's still just not quite the same as being in the same room with all these people.
No, definitely, I can appreciate that. And if you can give us the details for those events, we can link them in the show notes, Cathy. We'd be happy to amplify that and get some more traffic to it, without a doubt. Excellent.
But yeah, so
Yes.
I guess one of the things I was kind of interested to pick up with you, Cathy, is a lot of the folks that we talk to in this show, and this is true of folks that work for Microsoft as well, is we can get a little bit obsessive about the job, right? And it can kind of be all-consuming and stuff like that. So one of the things we like to do is kind of put the work and the career aside and just talk about what do folks like to get up to outside of the career. You know, what kind of stuff do they do to relax, hobbies and things like that. So are you able to share with us any little exciting things you get up to that help you balance that work-life seesaw?
So this is actually my craft room that I am in. It's become my home office for, the duration of the pandemic year. It used to be my daughter's playroom, and then when she got older, we turned it into a craft room, and she's off at college now. So I don't do much crafting because my crafting table is pretty much taken up by all of my computer stuff. But one of the things that I do, I've gotten back into music in the pandemic. This is an Appalachian or a lap dulcimer. And I started playing that back in college. And I met somebody at a place called the Freight and Salvage in Berkeley, California, over 30 years ago at open mic night. And he's become a friend over the years. And I got married and he got married. And his wife passed just at the beginning of the pandemic from a brain tumor. And we really just kind of reconnected more closely over folk music. It was a way that I could check in with him by going to the Seattle Song Circle every Sunday night. And, we get people from Australia and Ireland and, all over the world joining, East Coast, West Coast. And we just get together and we can't sing together. So it's a little bit more like an open mic thing where we each take turns, playing something, but you'll see people singing along if it's a song that everybody knows the song or the harmonies or the lyrics. And it's been really good. It's connected me back with my friend, and I hadn't touched my dulcimer in years. And so I had to kind of pick it up and remember that there were songs that I had learned decades ago that I'd completely forgotten I knew. And then somebody sings, it's like, oh, I know that song. And I'd relearn it.
That's pretty cool. And is it an easy thing to pick up, or is it quite? It looks quite intricate, but I say that as someone that's never really touched a string instrument.
No, dulcimers were actually they're folk instruments. They have 3 or 4 strings, but usually if you have the 4th string, the melody is the same, tuned to the same string, and it's really meant to be able to play easily, so that you could just usually it's tuned so that the 2 bottom strings are in a drone pattern. So they're always playing the same note, and you're just changing the melody line, which makes it very easy to, pick up common folk songs that are, simple chord structure.
Awesome. That's really cool. That's the best answer we've had yet insofar as what folks do outside the tech. You win that one. It's good.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. And I guess
what about any other crafts? Is there any other crafts that you do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The only sewing I've done lately is masks, but at one point I made a whole Victorian ball gown.
Wow.
Paper crafts, making cards. It's probably and crochet. There's a blanket in the back there that I crocheted.
Yeah. My wife is mad on crochet and knitting. She and her and my mother-in-law they love it. They're absolutely obsessed with it. So there's a lot of crochet and knitting in my house.
Well, it's nice because you get nice things when you're done.
You do. You can make some lovely blankets and all sorts of and little toys and dolls and all sorts of animals. It's brilliant. The stuff you can do is quite incredible. The patterns that they come up with, it really astonishes me. So cool. One of the things my wife does at the minute, though, she's very into hobbies. She does a lot of hobbies. Over the years, she's done yoga, and she was actually a yoga teacher for a while. But most recently, she's got back into art because she went to art college after school. to do a degree in textiles, but she's really rediscovering that at the minute and doing watercolor paintings and drawings and that sort of stuff. And it's really cool, the stuff I'm blown away by the stuff she does.
Yeah, it's a good time to rediscover.
Yeah,
it certainly is.
Good point. Good point. And I guess, to wrap up, we throw an obligatory question to everyone who comes on this show, and you can feel free to answer it however you like, but everyone gets it. We're kind of, I don't know if we're movie buffs, but we've got we're movie buffs. And one of the questions we throw to everyone, because it's a tech focused thing, I guess, is we ask them about Terminator. And we want to find out, we've got a running poll on the show, whether or not folks prefer the first Terminator movie or the second Terminator movie. So the question to you, Cathy, is, do you have a preference about which Terminator movie?
Well, and you're talking about first in terms of release date, not like, prequels and sequels.
Correct.
And, that time.
Spot on. Yes. Terminator 1 versus Terminator 2.
I'd have to say Terminator 2. I actually just started watching it again when we were on the way back from vacation. Linda Hamilton in that one is just so badass. And in the first one, a bit of the, eek. And then she comes back and she is just like, indestructible.
Yep, absolutely. Always remember that scene where they're out in the desert and she's preparing to go and she's
just field stripping that weapon and
exactly.
Actually for me is when she's doing the pull-ups in the insane asylum and
that is brilliant. So good. I need to watch these again. It's been so long since I watched either of them, and I need to go and just watch them because they are so good. But we love movies and TV on this show and music. We talk about it all. But lots of different passions come up, and that's one of the beauties of talking to people in the community when we get outside of the realms of Microsoft and Teams and all that, and talk about those sort of passions. And at least there's some great conversations and finding common interests. So love it, absolutely love it.
Yep, totally agreed, Pete. So I guess we better wrap up. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to talk about all that stuff. It's great to get insight, into Altspace and to WomenITPros, and then also the kind of work you do, with Intune, because we didn't really spend a whole bunch of time talking about Intune, but it is, as a product, constantly evolving, and it's getting all those features that you mentioned that make it so that folk, in a lot of cases, don't need to go to the support, right? It's got the built-in kind of troubleshooting tools and all that kind of stuff, so it's great to hear about that. As far as folks being able to find you online, connect with you online, find the stuff you're working on, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
I am at CXP Cathy. So we used to be customer experience programs. Now we're customer experience engineering, but CXP, I didn't put it in I should have put it in my little name there, but I'm there on both Twitter and LinkedIn.
Okay,
and
awesome.
Find me there. And then I'll give you the link for the WomenITPros so you can find those meetings pretty easy.
Absolutely. We'll put everything in the show notes page, so whenever folks find us on YouTube or Spotify or Anchor, they'll just be able to click on and get all that good stuff. So again, thanks for joining us. I guess I'll try and remember all the things I need to promote now. So like, subscribe, notifications, yada, yada, yada. Everybody knows the drill for now. Just share the episode, all that good stuff. So let's call it a day. Again, thanks for joining us. Pete, a pleasure as always.
Absolutely. Cathy, thanks so much. Take care all. We'll see you down the road. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.